thank you very much for joining us
Thank
to
you for
talk
having
about
me
it.
here.
So, I mean, to start with, you must have been doing some research and other things. There are other political parties in other cities in Canada. It's not common, but this isn't a first time ever or anything.
No, Vancouver and Montreal. And Edmonton has just started one as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, Edmonton would be new. So this has just been brought in with Alberta with a framework and a resolution.
Yeah.
I guess part of the problem is there's always been unofficial political parties.
Yes.
There have been alliances,
Yes.
but then you don't know where they stand because it's behind closed doors.
That's right.
So what motivated you to get active with this?
We came together. We want to see change. We know that the left and the unions are always very, very organized, and they put together a slate, and they were very successful last time. And we decided that we needed to come together as center-right conservatives and do the same and beat them at their own game.
Yeah, and you've already been doing a lot of organizational work there. I've been seeing the online updates. Anyways, there's been meetings around the city in different wards. I think there's 14 wards and
14 wards.
So have you started a nomination process? How does this work?
So what we did, we had our launch in June, and then in the summertime when a lot of people are away and stuff, we had meet and greets in all the wards and got out to meet the people, sold some memberships. And right now we're setting up ward associations in every single ward. We started on Saturday. We're going to end this Saturday, get all 14 set up. And then our bylaws are this close to being done with our legal team. And then we're going to start running candidates, nominations.
Yes. Okay. Because you've got a whole lot to do in actually a relatively short timeline. For those outside of Alberta who are reviewing, our municipal elections are going to be about, 14 months from now.
Yeah.
And to the point, I mean, it's one thing if a party was already established and just trying to get your nominees and get campaigning, you're establishing a party as well as getting those nominees. So being in such a rush, how do you prevent making mistakes?
We have a really good team behind us. We have legal help, and we have a lot of really experienced people from all different walks of life that have worked on parties before. So we have a lot of great advice coming, and we're learning as we go as well.
Yeah. So now this would still be different than a regular party in the sense of, okay, we got 14 council seats and one mayor seat. I imagine there's going to be one mayoral candidate nominated at some point or another too.
We're leaving. Yeah, we're going to do a mayoral nomination, and we're leaving the choices of all those up to the members. So the members are going to get to vote on each candidate in each ward on who they want to represent them. And we really feel like that's what differentiates us from the slates that have been put together prior, is that we're taking it to the members, we're taking it to the communities. They get to decide who's going to represent them.
Yeah. So as you're saying, the bylaws are just getting finished up, and for people not in partisan politics, that's kind of the rule book for the party. This is where you're going to do things and how you manage them.
That's right.
This being unprecedented is difficult. The relationship between the mayor candidate and the other candidates, it wouldn't be quite the same as a political party leader with MLAs or members of parliament, but they would still be kind of the main representative at the same time.
Well, we don't feel like our party is going to have that kind of a leader. There's going to be boards and there's going to be accountability, but the leader isn't necessarily the mayor. Like the premier is the leader of the UCP. The mayor is not going to be the leader. It's going to be everybody working together.
Yeah, so it's different a little bit. Is all I'm saying, that relationship, because one of the questions people have, and it's a fair one, they fear they could lose local representation if their councillor comes in conflict with the leader or the mayor or the party. Sometimes a one ward's interest might be different than another ward's interest. That representative wants to be able to, or people want to make sure their representative can represent them. So
what we've decided is that the party itself isn't going to determine policy. We're going to leave that up to every councillor, every candidate that's going to run is going to be out in the community, talking to the people, having those conversations, and then can develop their own policy based on those conversations. And because what's good for Ward 7 is Ward 7 is very close to downtown. We have different issues than Ward 10 is going to have out in the Northeast. So we feel strongly that those councillors should be representing their wards.
Yeah, so generalized principles, because you still have to have something in common to bind you, but I mean, I like the idea. I can see how it would work where you have to draft legislation somewhere like federally or provincially. But I mean, that's where parties split apart when they fight over, well, this little policy over here, this little policy over there. If you could just stick to the general principles,
that's right,
you could hopefully have some unity.
In all the meetings that we had as a group coming together, figuring out what this was going to look like, I think the conversation we had about values and principles was the most intense, because we wanted to make sure that that was our guiding. That's our guidance on vetting candidates, and how we believe the party should be run. So we're looking for people who agree and are in line with our principles and values.
Yeah. So I mean, some of the things I guess you speak of is like smaller government, or
focusing on focusing on the things that City Hall is supposed to be doing.
Like providing water, I've heard, has been a big one.
Water. I showered today.
Yeah. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Water. Potholes. We hear a lot about potholes in the city. I drive a 4x4, and I'm really glad, because some of the roads in the city are tragic.
Oh, it is terrible. And we got a lot of pet projects and other things happening on the side. Another big issue is crime, disorder, things on transit.
Yeah.
A lot for your candidates to bite off.
That's right. But if they focus it in their ward, then they're going to come up with there's going to be maybe 10 issues. They're going to come up with the top 3, and they're going to be able to develop their candidacy around that.
So in the case of incumbent candidates, it might get a little stickier for you. There's a few that perhaps some of the new party members would like to stay on and see. Would you make them go through a nomination process?
So what we're going to do is we're going to allow the members of each ward to vote, and we're calling it a bypass nomination. So the members get together in the ward association, and they get to decide if they want their current candidate or their current councillor to be the candidate. So they get to decide. We're doing it in all 14 to keep it fair to everybody. And after that person has been acclaimed or not, then we approach the councillor. Let's use Dan, for example. We approach Dan and say, the members of your ward would like you to run under the party banner. He has 48 hours to agree or not to agree. And then we go from there. We run it.
Just to clarify, I'm assuming you're speaking of Dan McLean of Ward 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as an example.
Yes. Well, in looking broadly, I mean, he hasn't said anything for or against as far as I've seen. He would be one of the few in council that sort of look like they might fit in with the principles of this forming party at this point.
Absolutely.
I don't imagine there's going to be a lot of people rushing out to get Mr. Walcott or anybody on board, nor would he be interested. But so funding now, the provincial, have they laid out the framework on how this is going to be organized within a party yet?
They haven't fully released the regulations yet. Yeah. So we're hoping to do that soon. We're going to have a founding convention in October where the members will ratify the board and ratify the bylaws. And then we're fully expecting to have another meeting, special general meeting in the spring to change anything that needs to change once the regulations come down.
Yeah, so you're going to have to hit the ground running hard. And one of the frustrations in municipal politics I've seen is there can be some fantastic candidates, brilliant organizers, excellent ideas, but they've never been involved in an election their whole life. They don't know how to campaign. They don't know what GOTV is or databasing or volunteer management.
That's right.
So I would imagine the party's going to provide some centralized training and tools like that for the candidates.
Absolutely. We think that's one of the huge benefits of having a party is for people who want to step up, want to serve their community, but don't have a clue on what to do, where to begin. I was a school board trustee candidate in 2021, and I had no idea what to do. If I'd had a party to go to and say, hey, I'd like to be a candidate and get through a nomination there, and then be able to run in the election, that would have been so helpful to have guidance. So that's exactly what we want to do. We want to support people who want to serve their city.
And just, I guess, again, to explain, because we got a lot of non-party playing people who watch. They're politically involved, or they wouldn't be watching me ranting and raving, but they still might not necessarily played within a party. A nomination is when the local members are going to have theoretically a competition between a few candidates and choose who's ahead. I mean, it's a first level of vetting, because something that's been missing in municipal politics. A lot of people can present themselves as one thing, and then they get in, and it turns out they were nothing like that. They just wanted to get elected. Mayor Nahedanich, I'll say it outright, is a perfect example of it. Having a nomination allows I guess, the locals to see these candidates before it's election time and they're fully committed.
And it engages Calgarians. Doing these ward association meetings, that's one of the things we're hearing a lot of, is people want to have a say in who's representing them and they want to be involved. And this is a great way to get everybody really excited and to back a really strong candidate. And then reciprocally, when that candidate wins, is to have some accountability back to the community as well, because now you have established relationships with these candidates, so that when they're councillors, there's still a back and forth conversation that can be had.
Yeah, so it might be premature to ask, but in the bylaws or something, would there be some sort of mechanism then where there's going to be a review 3 years in on the candidates, say if they got elected, or something that might trigger another nomination vote if they weren't satisfied? How do you hold them accountable after the election?
You know what? That is a really good question. I'm not quite sure if that's in our bylaws
okay.
or not. I really wish John was here. John's the detail bylaw guy.
No problem. And imagine something like that's in there. Or that's the thing with being new. You can talk about these things at your general meeting or so on.
It's a great idea that we can bring up and let the members decide on.
Because that's, you don't want to be locked in and then
that's right.
Have that incumbent advantage. I mean, that's been part of the problem in municipal politics in general, too. There's not a lot of name recognition. Mm-hmm. So again, people are coming out of nowhere and it's hard to compete against the known councillor, even if they... to be frank, weren't necessarily that good.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly it. And especially when you have 27 people running for mayor, how are you supposed to be educated on every single one of those people?
Yeah.
It's impossible to keep up like that, even if you are politically involved in everything. So we really want to simplify it and bring it back to the people. And I think that's a huge advantage over the slate. I don't like to be told who to vote for. I want to have a say in the process of how that happens.
Well, and keeping them rolling, as I said, between elections, like one of the best strategies for councillor once they got in used to be nobody moves, nobody gets hurt. There were two who stand out. And, I'll say their names. You're being nice. You're starting a party. But Dale Hodges, may he rest in peace. But he was in for something like 30 years. And he would never take a stand on anything. In fact, he was notorious for whenever a controversial vote came up, he'd suddenly get a stomach illness and go to the bathroom, wouldn't come back till the vote was back in council. And Ray Jones was in for 20 some years and nobody had ever heard of him. Same thing. He wouldn't do anything. But when election time came, they were the incumbents. People still knew the name and they would just keep getting in. Yeah. And you got to make them work it while they're in there, not just get in and turn into a mushroom.
I would really, I'll speak personally. I'd love to see councillors, instead of being in an office in City Hall, I'd love to see them have offices in their wards.
Yeah,
be a little more, be a little more accessible to the people.
Yeah, a member of parliament has a riding associate or riding, and then there's a constituency one for provincial. That would make sense. It'd be another expense, but I guess if you could save money elsewhere.
We could probably save a lot of money elsewhere.
Yeah. So I guess what are your next steps then? What's coming up?
So we're going to finish building the ward associations this week, and then we're getting into hopefully the bylaws will be done. Like, we're so close, and then we can get into candidates. We've already got a welcome. We've got so many people stepping up who have put their name forward for maybe I'll run, I'm thinking about it, to absolutely I want to run, and so many great people in every ward. So we're getting our packages prepared for those folks, and then we rolled into our founding convention. Okay.
So we're running out of time. It went fast, but before I let you go, then how do people get involved? Where do they reach out? If they want to get in on it.
BetterCalgaryParty.ca is the best place. That's where we have all the events that are coming up. That's where we have all the principles and values. You can find out all the information there.
Excellent. A BetterCalgaryParty.ca. And I know people have been referring to it as ABC.
Yeah, already. And that's okay. But the website is a Better Calgary.
Yeah, you want to find the website to know you can get to the events.
We're also on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Twitter, X. So we're a little bit everywhere.
Okay, excellent. Anything else you'd like to add before I let you go then?
Oh, nothing off the top of my head. I think I got it all in.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, and I really do, hope for the best. It's a big task you have ahead. I'll just throw my two bits of advice in. I was, part of the founding of the Wild Rose Party and things like that, and I know you guys are probably already sweating it. Make sure the bylaws pull you together rather than rip yourselves apart over it. No hill's worth dying on.
That's right.
Compromise,
That's right.
If you don't get your way on this one this time, Give it a year or two. You can change it later. Don't stomp out the door.
I will say that. I will say we've come together as sort of a center-right coalition, and I think if we sort of have worked on the basis if we agree on the fundamentals, everything else can be flexible. But the fundamentals are where, and that's where you get 80% of what you want, as opposed to 0% of what you want.
You're certainly not getting it where it stands.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us about it. I'm really going to be watching this with interest. I hope to speak to you guys again, perhaps after the AGM and that, and see where it's all going.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.